Evening, I would like to call the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting for Wednesday, September 10th, 2025 to order. The time is now 7 o'clock. Would you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I would like to ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Beaton,
Here.
Councilmember Brocksmith,
Here.
Councilmember Correas,
Excuse tonight.
Councilmember Hudson,
Here.
Councilmember Molinar,
Here.
Councilmember Tesoro,
Here.
Councilmember Vanderstoop.
Here. Thank you. Item 2 is the approval of tonight's council meeting agenda. Council, if you've had some time to review the agenda, would entertain a motion to approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Motion by Melissa and a second by Gary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. All right, item 3 is community comments. If there's anyone present in council chambers tonight who would like to address council, come on up. We'll give you about 3 minutes to share with council. If you'd please state your name and city of residence.
Hi, all. It's been a while.
Hello.
Ed Johnson, downtown Mount Vernon, and I've got lots to tell you. First off, I just came from a meeting at the Scattered Housing Authority with the Downtown Association, doing a presentation about making the president's building a little bit more, appealing. So that's really interesting because they want to, put some lights outside so it lights it up a bit, and also some, I don't think they're murals, but something to that order, a vinyl or something that just cleans it up, especially coming the Halloween street festival and all that. Downtown associations did the presentation tonight. Secondly, I just talked to the chief about trying to use part of your $50,000 extra toward bounties. So a $2 bounty on anybody being stupid downtown, like speeding, racing. Exhaust system's been modified. A BMW was on some kind of truck frames, and he needed a step ladder for at least 5 to 6 feet to get in the dumb thing. But it would just park blatantly out there. In the dark, I can't even tell who's driving or what's driving or who's in the car because everything is so darn dark nowadays. And I know that to be, I don't know if it's criminal, but it's definitely illegal to some point. That said, I figured, give somebody $2. I do it for free, so don't worry about me. The other thing was the cleaning up of the presidents. I actually live in there, and I really love it. I mean, 1909, I just learned that President Taft may have stayed there. I don't know, but I just love those. Ulysses S. Grant Hotel in downtown San Diego is marvelous. Built in 1910, I think. So same era, same type of architecture and everything. And in that building, they actually have portraits of every president who stayed there. And I think that just about every president did stay there. I was pretty surprised, but it's really kept up. I mean, it is a 5-star business. But anyways, so I did want to mention that because I really love it. Finally, I've been living there 3 years. That there's some attention coming to it. And I know that a couple of councilmen have actually taken a close look themselves. And there is a lot of great history in this town. But we got to stop those big truck guys, the F-350s and whatever, thinking they can park downtown because they can't. They have to take up more than one spot. And then I don't understand it. Unfortunately, or fortunately for Carrie, she just retired, and we'd often have conversation about that. And I know that our community is diligent because they sent a policewoman over to talk to Carrie while I was talking to her. This is the parking attendant I'm speaking to that was downtown. And somebody had called her in for taking photos of the license plates, which was part of her job. But the new police officer didn't know. It was hilarious, and thank God I was there. But anyways, there's, we got a great community, and I would hope we can pull it back together because it started to fall apart here in the last 30 years. And it's significantly here in the last, 5 years, Barrett? Maybe more, I don't know. I don't pay that close attention. But I do want to go fishing, and I do want to go fishing 1.5 blocks. No, maybe it's a block from my home where I had fish, but now there's a darn, wall. No, it's the railway, whatever, against the sidewalk, the river walk. Mm-hmm. And we got to hop the fence to go where we used to fish. Mm. But I'm getting real tired of government telling me how to fish, when to fish, and what to fish with. Now they're telling me where to fish and they're saying it's above the bridge. Well, screw that. I mean, I used to go a block. Now I got it. What? I'm disabled. What the heck? So that's for another day. But anyways, there's a lot of ideas that, back in the day, they had an old building down there on the river, and it had a fishing tackle place and I remember the Mexican restaurant was really good, burritos. And I don't remember a couple other buildings, but it was sagging and had some issues, so it's long gone. But point is, like in so many other places, you have a means of offering to customers or people with wallets.
We're a minute over, Ed.
Okay,
It's
to
all
go
right.
fish
Land the
in there
plane.
and then take advantage of the downtown merchants. Okay, thanks.
Ed, I wanted to make sure that the clerk has your contact information. I don't know,
What
if
do
you
they- what do you
state your
want?
name.
Ed Johnson. Oh,
Ed
I didn't
Johnson.
say that.
I
Yeah,
don't think we
keep
got it
me
at the beginning.
keep
We
me
know.
legal.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address city council tonight? All right, we'll move on. Oh, come on up. If you would please state your name, city of residence.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Ingrid Hannon. I live here in Mount Vernon. I've been here before, and I'm back. And I am part of the quickly growing Skagit Valley Bicycle Coalition. We're an organization dedicated to promoting safer streets and more livable communities for bicyclists and pedestrians in Skagit County through education, advocacy, and collaboration. So you all might have seen this come through your inboxes. I'm just going to read part of it here in case that's helpful to hear some of it out loud. And I've got some folks with me that are also here to speak on this issue tonight. One of our top concerns is bicycle and pedestrian safety on the SR 536 Skagit River Bridge, which I know has been an issue and a topic of conversation in this community for a while. The current infrastructure discourages bike transportation and is dangerous for those who do cross, requiring cyclists to either dismount or walk the sidewalk, or ride the road with vehicles with no shoulder for passing. The recently announced WSDOT plans to close the bridge for repainting without any improvements for bikeability and pedestrian access have us concerned that not only will pedestrian and bicycle access be limited during that time, but also we will be left with inadequate status quo for the foreseeable future. Dedicating the significant funding required for the 2026 painting to simply extend the status quo for all users is concerning. We would like to have a conversation to understand where plans are moving forward with a more pedestrian and bike-friendly option for the River Bridge, and where we can be of help to support this improvement for health, tourism appeal, and climate resilience of our county. As our county and city work towards the climate elements of the comprehensive plans, we're advocating for improvements to non-motorized infrastructure as an important part of the strategy for reducing vehicle miles driven. As a coalition, we are interested in finding funding opportunities and helping being a part of the solution to this problem, and collaborating to expand and develop plans. We recognize this issue extends beyond decision-making at the city level, and there's been conversations with many folks about this. And so we're including the county and state folks in this conversation as much as we can. But we just wanted to bring this forward to you all in a more official presentation of this one particular issue that I'm sure and I'm hopeful that you'll hear from us about other ideas and plans and dreams we have for making Mount Vernon and Skagit County more bikeable and more pedestrian friendly. So thanks for taking the time to read this and to hear it again and to have us here to be a part of the process.
Thank you, Ingrid.
Thanks, everybody.
Hi, my name's Andrea Mesploy. I reside here in Mount Vernon. I'm also here as a member of the Skagit Valley Bike Coalition, wanting to echo everything that Ingrid has brought forward. Mainly one thing I want to just add to this is that the current bridge and sidewalk are not ADA compliant. And I know that the Washington Department put in curb cuts on each side, which is great, but there is no way to pass safely If there is somebody with a disability aid on the sidewalk, you can't pass in, like, if you're going on opposite directions. So I understand. I was in the last city hall meeting where Mayor Donovan had the man in charge of the street let us all know which streets are owned by the state. So like, I understand the difficulty there. But I do think that being the only pedestrian access to the west or east side of Mount Vernon is a loss on this, like as a city infrastructure. There's a lot of people that live on the west side, work on the east side, vice versa. I had a really wonderful conversation with Washington Department of Transportation last week about the bridge closure. And I know they are taking these things into consideration, but one of them is busing people from the east side to the west side with a minimum transportation time of 30 minutes. I think that that's unacceptable to do to our residents that live or work on either side of that bridge, with the closure looking to be about a year. So I'm asking the city to work, like if the Skagit Valley Bike Coalition can work with you guys, how to like come up with other ideas of what we could do for the community while this bridge closure is happening. And then also, what are we going to do in the future to make sure that our community members that do have disability aids or that walk and don't own cars, like how are they safely getting to and from each side of Mount Vernon? And then another thing, I just want to say thank you for the recent painting of the pedestrian and cycle symbols along the Colchin Trail on the big sidewalk. That was really great. And I don't know, my first thought was it would be wonderful if we could have a big bike sign like that on the bridge or leading up to the bridge, but I understand, I'm not sure how that would work if the city doesn't own that piece of the street. But maybe some signs that say share the lane, have a bicycle. If the city could put something like that up, that would be a great, just like start. So yeah, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate all that you guys do.
Thanks, Andrew.
Good evening, Lennis Herberger. I live in Mount Vernon. Also a member of the Skagit Valley Bicycle Coalition and a board member with Mount.
Welcome.
I would like to echo my friends' comments on the 539 bridge and the cyclability there. And I would also like to extend comments to perhaps we could do something to improve the access to Little Mountain Park for biking and walking. Through the Parks Foundation, we've engaged with the county about an undeveloped strip of road that they own and that they're interested in transferring to the city for use as a trail to access Little Mountain Park off of Blackburn. On that, and perhaps some engagement with the Parks Foundation on building a trail on that property. Just the park more easily.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Lance. Anyone else? All right. We'll move on to item 4. Thank you all for coming tonight and sharing with us. Item 4 is tonight's consent agenda. It includes meeting minutes, payroll checks, wire transfers, and claims. So would you like to move for adoption?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second. Motion by Richard and a second by Andrew. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Passes. Item 5 is committee reports. For committee reports tonight, council held its Public Works and Library meeting tonight at 6 o'clock. And Councilmember Mary Hudson has a report on that committee meeting. Mary.
Thank you, Mayor. First item on our agenda is always the approval of our last meeting minutes, which was done. And then first off, we went into an update or a worksheet we went through for some of our 1590, we call them 1590 funds for housing and services. We went through basically and saw that we had a little more money, so we were able to spread out a little bit more into beefing up some awards and making some new awards. So we expect to have that on our agenda to finalize on September 24th. Next up, Isaac Huffman, our library director, gave us an update on the new kitchen at the library. We're getting so much closer. Hopefully we'll be in use in December. we're starting to do some reservations in the November timeframe. So very excited about that. He also talked about some service enhancements that they made at the library over the summer and an overview of additional, some more updates in the programming. One thing that I made note of is that our summer reading program had 1,106 participants, which is the highest that has been in the last 10 years. So that's very exciting, and I'm happy to see people taking advantage of the library. It's quite fantastic. Next up, we had Blaine Chesterfield from Public Works, and he talked about some drilling that we're having done at the Skagit Highlands Detention Pond. We had 4 boring holes drilled and 2 groundwater monitoring wells were installed. And this is proactive to make sure that the ground is not shifting and we don't have to worry about other things coming on in the future. So we should have some information on what they're finding or not finding in the next probably, I would say 4 to 6 months. I'm guessing, but I'm going to say that. So Blaine, right, make a note of that. And then we talked about a professional services agreement with Brown and Caldwell Engineering, which we hope to have on our September 24th agenda, I believe, as well. And it's for implementation and support of the municipal stormwater permit program. Finally, we had Frank Reinert talk about our big project, which is the Riverside Drive Improvement Project 1 and 2. He gave us a great summary of the important needs for the completion of the design for these 2 projects, summarized design scope tasks for the professional services agreements with Pertite for both projects, and presented, summarized the funding strategy 2025 to 2027 to complete design for both the projects, including use of our current grant funds. No agenda requests and no miscellaneous for the good of the order. We adjourned at 6:55.
Thanks, Mary. Last Wednesday, we had, council had their Public Safety Committee meeting, and Councilmember Navor Tercero chairs that one. Has a report for us, Navor.
Yeah, so we were called to order at 6 o'clock there. We, first order of business was to approve the August 6th minutes. We then had a presentation from police. Mr. Green, who's gave us a presentation on the K-9 unit that we'd like to bring to Mount Vernon Police. And so we had a presentation on all of the resources that we're going to need in order to support that. And so I think the department proposed using opioid settlement funds to reestablish this K-9 unit. Then we heard from our city attorney about a pet chipping ordinance, and he reviewed the proposed update to chapters 6.04 and 6.08 of the municipal code to update the animal licensing requirements that we're looking at changing. Staff proposes removing licensing requirements and replacing them with microchipping. We then had our discussion on 1590 funding, and Steve Sexton helped present that to us. We worked through the worksheets of the funding requests. Then we engage in a lengthy discussion about each request and how to allocate those funds. Discussions continued tonight, and so we had no agenda requests or no miscellaneous. Good of the orders. We adjourned at 8:22.
Okay, thanks, Navor. Item 5B is council member comments. Any council member comments this evening? No comments? All right, we will move on to the mayor's report. Just wanted to let everyone know that the next mayor's coffee will be held next Friday, September 19th at 10 a.m. This time we're going to be at the new Skagit PUD building in the new Aqua Room. It's at 1415 Freeway Drive. Just follow that driveway all the way back to the new building. Don't go to the old one. But we had another great turnout at the last Mayor's Coffee in August. I love getting a chance to hear from folks in our community, to hear about what's important to you, to learn from you, and see what you're hoping for our city. And I hope to see you next Friday again, even more of you at 10 a.m. We'll have plenty of room. And that is your mayor's report for September 10th. Thanks, Steve. Item A will be a presentation tonight from our friends at North Star. And Steve Sexton is our special projects manager and is going to introduce this item tonight. Steve.
Yep. Thank you, Mayor, evening council. Joining us this evening, we have two folks from Skagit County. We have Monica Negrila. She's the Director of Strategic Initiatives for Skagit County, as well as George Kosovich. He is the Manager of the Community Services Division of Skagit County Public Health. And the discussion this evening, the presentation will be on a proposal for countywide sharing of opioid funding. So with that, I'll turn it over to Monica and George.
Good evening, Mayor Donovan and members of the council. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm Monica Negrila. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Support for North Star here at Skagit County, and also George Kosovich is here with us tonight, my colleague at Public Health. He leads the Community Services Division there. So as Steve mentioned tonight, how do I do this, Steve? Quick? Oh, never mind. Okay, I should know. Sorry, it's just a simple. Okay, so our hope tonight is we are here to seek your direction for the proposed regional collaboration utilizing opioid settlement funds. No action is required from you tonight unless you choose so, of course. But this is just the first interaction. We hope to get your direction and your feedback, and we hope to come back at a later time for possible action. So we would like to start with providing you a brief background of the opioid settlement funds. Then we will dive into what we propose to do regionally under that collective action, hoping that we can achieve more if we work together regionally. And then we hope to hear your direction about next steps. And at the end, we also have just a couple of North Star related updates and reminders about a couple of meetings coming up. So I'm going to jump right into providing you just a little bit of background. So the opioid settlement funds really originated from lawsuits against opioid manufacturers and distributors for their role into the opioid crisis. Legal action began as early as 2018, and over the last few years, there were some major settlements that resulted in the funds that we are talking about today. Some of the settlements continue. You will see on the screen some numbers. They are up to date as of June 30th of this year. Since then, another settlement has occurred and new money have been coming in. So you might not, on the screen, we don't have the most recent numbers, but these are the numbers that we would like to propose for regional collaboration. So mentioned a little bit about money. So as to date, or until June 30th of this year, about $2.6 million from 8 different settlements have been brought into our region. And these funds may be used for all sorts of opioid abatement and recovery efforts. A variety of services fall under that. In terms of engagement with you, prior to me even joining North Star, you started these conversations and brainstorming as a group, individually as a city, and also with North Star regionally about what are some options. More recently, thank you so much. Many of you attended the joint City Councils, Mayors, and County Commissioners meeting on June 6th. That is when we had an initial conversation about this proposal tonight. At that time, we heard from City Councils about an interest in the regional collaboration, and we also discussed prioritization for different projects, and that's what we are bringing forward to you tonight. So what we are proposing is really trying to balance the regional investments. We've heavily focused on regional investments tonight, but also recognizing that you do have individual needs in your jurisdictions, and that you may want to use portions of those opioid settlement funds for special projects that you might have in your jurisdiction. So we are proposing a balanced approach there, again, with more heavily focused on the regional investments. And then, as you're going to see, we are going to focus on the priorities that were identified at that joint meeting in June. So going into details, the proposed allocation focuses on using about 80% of those funds that we currently have available for the joint priorities and leaving about 20% for some city allocations. And the priorities that were identified at the joint meeting were the Skagit Star Center, in particular, startup funds for that center, and then recovery and bridge housing options regionally. What you also see on the screen on the pie chart is the funding breakdown of that $2.6 million total and how the allocation is broken down by each of the jurisdictions. Just a reminder, the most recent settlement that was with Purdue Pharma is not reflected here. And so with that, I'm going to invite George to provide additional details and numbers.
Thanks, Monica. So what I'd like to do is just quickly walk through a little bit of description about what these joint investments would be, talk about the funding amount going to those, some expected outcomes, and then give you all a more detailed breakdown of what this looks like. We're actually having this discussion with each of the 4 cities. So we came from Cedro-Woolley earlier tonight, and we've got Burlington tomorrow, and then Anacortes. I think one of the challenges and one of the opportunities of doing this kind of joint investment is we all can work together and make some things happen that you couldn't on your own. And so that's really how these 3 items came to be, and I think were identified as priorities. So first category are kind of new programs or new capacity that would require some startup funding or 2 years of commitment of funding is really the idea, that these are going to require ongoing funding. And then the second category is that one-time investment opportunity. So the first is what we're calling detox bridge housing. It's not something that exists in our community today. And it was a gap that was identified by our providers, by co-responders, by other organizations saying people go to treatment and they might go to detox for 5 days. They don't have a place to go after that, a safe housing opportunity. They might exit back to the community they came from where it's not a safe environment or an unhoused environment. And so the idea here is a really short-term stay, short-term housing model. We think about 2 weeks while you're waiting on that treatment bed. So that's what we're calling bridge housing, which would contrast with recovery housing, which is a longer-term transitional model. I know the council has funded some projects through New Earth Recovery. That's exactly the type of program we're talking here, that is structured housing for people that are in active recovery and kind of rebuilding their lives. And so that's that second category. In terms of the one-time opportunities, really what we're seeking out is startup fundings for the STAR Center. I think you all are familiar with the STAR Center. It stands for Stabilization, Treatment, and Recovery. It's a new facility that includes crisis stabilization, detox, and treatment beds that will open in February of this year. We think February 1st is the latest date. So in terms of some example outcomes and some costs associated with this, for the first 2 categories, again, these are a 2-year funding commitment, $150,000 for bridge housing. So again, this would be short-term stays, with the goal really being reducing a risk of overdose because people are particularly vulnerable when they leave detox, and increasing the likelihood and success in reaching outpatient or inpatient treatment. And so that's that detox bridge housing. For recovery housing, we have some history of this in Skagit County. We have 9 certified recovery houses. We have a number of Oxford houses. And so we have some history of what those cost, and we think we'd likely do an RFP kind of using these collective funds, identify a new provider or a new space, new capacity, and could add anywhere between 25 and 30 beds, depending on the size and structure of that location. Here, the goal is improving housing stability and maintaining recovery for people. In terms of the one-time investment opportunities, This is really startup cash flow for this new center to be operated by Pioneer Human Services. It's a big facility. It's 48 beds, 75 employees, a $12 million operating budget, and the goal of operating in the black on an ongoing basis as a nonprofit, but it requires startup costs to make that happen, to hire, train staff, and we want to ensure that it's ready to open, to take first responder drop-offs from day one and be fully staffed. And so that's the funding request there. Getting a little more detailed in terms of spreadsheets, I think the important thing here is it's kind of a collective effort. You can see the Skagit County column. Skagit County received, as Monica said, about 62% of the funds. The remainder go to these various cities. And just allocating the funding between these two categories. So $1.5 million split between the county funds and the city, holding back 20% for city priorities, and then making those 2-year program commitments. You can see the county portion and the city portion. In talking with all of the cities, this is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. We want to hear city preferences to make this work. And so there is, we put a plan together, but I think there is some flexibility here also within funding particular categories or priorities for the cities. And then the last slide here that shows budget. Monica noted that this is already out of date. This takes us through the state fiscal year. So we know that Mount Vernon's received as of June 30th about $440,000. Probably a little bit more in the bank because some settlement monies come in after that. And then there are 2 new settlements that are coming forward. But you can see kind of the split between these different categories. So again, back to the prior slide, Skagit County spending $1.6 million, the city sending $1 million, split across these categories, leaving a portion to spend that's discretionary, that would be available for whatever you wanted to make. I'll turn it back over to Monica for some discussion questions.
Thank you. So with that, council members, we would love to hear direction from you. Of course, you have the option to just approve our initial proposal. We would also love to hear any other funding allocation formulas that you might consider, or if you even just have a totally different proposal that you would like to make, we would love to hear any and all direction. And so with that, specific questions for you tonight, is the council supportive of the 3 proposed investments to begin with, the Star Center, the Bridge Housing, and Recovery Housing? And then are there alternative directions or priorities that you would like to recommend for us before we come back?
George and Monica, thank you for the presentation. Thanks for being here tonight, bringing the tour to Mount Vernon. Council, let's go with that first question. How are we feeling about those 3 proposed investment areas? Councilmember Tricero.
What are some of the prospective sites for these projects? Where were we looking at placing these?
So Star Center set, that's in Cedro-Woolley. That one's easy. In terms of bridge housing and recovery housing, the bridge housing, one of the options we have is actually buying out beds at the detox facility. So that's currently in Burlington, Cedro-Woolley. There's also a recovery housing provider that's expressed some interest in that has facilities in Mount Vernon. So I think those could be some options. In terms of the recovery housing, I think the most likely path we would do is put out an RFP and see what comes forward. I think today there's a good number of recovery houses in Mount Vernon. That's where I think the housing stock has been affordable and the providers have been able to make it work. I think there's a possibility of it being in Mount Vernon or another city, kind of depending on what came in the proposal process.
George, to clarify, with pooled resources and for all 3 of these, despite where they're located, the services are available to all jurisdictions, right?
Absolutely.
Other questions? Yeah, Richard.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. And great work getting us started. It'd be hard to answer anything other than yes to the first bullet because these are our needs. But I do have a lot of questions. And so I wish we had a work session where we could really get into the details, and I don't know how much to bore everybody with. But I think a first question that I want to ask here is, it appears this is about 1/3 of the total pot of opioid funding that would be available. There's some additional settlements coming, so that's a little bit of an overestimate. But that's about a 2-year time frame. And of course, it took us decades to get into this problem. It took us 7 years to settle on this opioid settlement. And so I guess it leaves me, sort of begging the question, what is the grand strategy here? And should we spend a third of our money in the first 2 years? And so I kind of went back to the North Star work plan for the year and noticed that one of the deliverables is to produce a document outlining the current gaps in recovery, treatment, and housing services. And I know you have a crisis co-response team that's been working, and I'm sure there's been a lot of great progress in that. So I'm wondering, do we have a comprehensive assessment? Is that documentation ready? Is this driven? Is it driving these priorities? And I do want to just say that I don't feel like the hour that we had, and was it June 6th or whenever, really enables us to say we set priorities. I think we had some good thoughts that were expressed, but I, like to go from A to Z, and I'm still back at A. And so I need your help to understand that this is a good investment for us. And then I have lots of questions under there, but that's the big one.
Fair question. Thank you so much, Councilmember. So to begin with the document, yes, currently the recovery task force is working on, and it's actually in a draft format. We are getting, hopefully in the next few weeks, it's going to be ready, and we would love to share that with you. So hopefully that answers a little bit of your question. For the second part, also, absolutely, you're right. The meeting in June was not enough, and hopefully moving forward, we'd have longer periods of time for additional conversation and even work sessions. We would love that in any shape and form. Yes, we would just love together and to work together and to identify priorities together. So we are very open.
I guess I'll just say a second what Richard just said. I'm looking forward to working together more, getting some more information, and participating more in the discussion. I'm certainly not there right now.
Yeah, Melissa.
Hi, Monica. Hi, George. It's nice to see you again. Just saw you last night. What I was wondering is, and it's also for people that are watching from home, these 3 bullets, who came up with those? I mean, I know it's the commissioners. I believe it's our mayors. How big was the group that came up with these 3 priorities?
So we had in addition to the mayors and the commissioners from the leadership team, we also heard from the various task forces that currently make up North Star. So we heard, for example, from Community Court and from our co-response teams about the need for the different types of housing and recovery housing programs. We heard from the task forces, from the advisory group, from our nonprofit providers.
So the experts, not the electeds.
Exactly. Thank you.
Not to differentiate the two.
Thank you for that.
Other questions?
I just want to say
Yeah.
thank you for being here. Appreciate it. I'm on one of those task force, so I was part of that conversation. I think these are the 3 most important things for our community as a whole. And of course, we're all going to have our own little things in our communities, right? And that's what that extra. I'm kind of hesitant. I mean, the number is a little bit. I would love to study that a little bit more, just so that I can dig in a little bit. But I understand that if you put your money together, we're going to have better results. I get that part totally. So I am supportive of your proposed investment areas.
Council, any thoughts about alternative directions or priorities that you've already thought of? Or is that something that would come out maybe in a work session as we dive in a little more? Yeah, Richard?
Yeah, I can't wait to start reading about this in 2 weeks when that particular report comes out and continuing to get more educated about it. But as far as other directions, the Star Center is where we put an awful lot of effort. And you guys have done tremendous work to get us here. And I'm just very, very supportive of whatever it takes for the region to make that successful. At the same time, I want to know the details, right? And so I did ask for some of those, and I know you guys have thought about the fact that there's a nonprofit that's going to be operating the center, and it takes a while to get up and running. And then I assume they'll be billing places like Medicare, which, oh my good, Godspeed to them. So it's just a long time, and I think the idea of front loading that makes a lot of sense. At the same time, I don't want to cut a blank check for millions of dollars and not see that return. And so thinking about some kind of methodology to make sure that that's metered, that we're not over hiring to meet the initial needs. That when billings can be done, that the billings are being done instead of working off of our funds. So you see, there's just a lot of operational questions I would have to want to safeguard our resources and make sure that we're only providing the necessary funds to get them there. So that's an example. Bridge housing sounds like a fascinating way to go, and recommended by professionals. And we know, and I talked to Judge Howson about just the gaps that we have in our coverage. So again, makes a lot of sense. Devil's in the details though. If you look at the 150,000 and the number of days that we get out of that, that's about $428 a night. Is there a cheaper way to do bridge housing? So work session. We're not going to get into all my questions here tonight, but I'm a supporter of the regional approach. We got to work together.
And I got one after Navor.
Okay, Navor, then Andrew.
And this is actually more of a question, I believe, for you, Mayor, because you were involved in the process there. The breakdown of the funding there, how proportional is that to the populations of each of those jurisdictions?
Ooh,
Because I mean, obviously, we are the biggest chunk of that
Yeah.
pie. Is that close to what our population is versus any of these others?
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer to that, what the percentage was that was used. Can you help us with that, George?
They used a formula that did include population, but it also included some other demographic indicators, including things like overdose deaths, criminal justice data. So there was a formula that determined it at the state level.
Good question. Andrew?
I just wanted to add on to why I would like a work session and the other funding opportunities. Generally speaking, I think people know this about me, but I'm pretty familiar with the nonprofits in this area. I've been working with them for a pretty long time now. And we do have in the county, I wouldn't say propensity. I would say sometimes we jump on new exciting things because new and exciting things are fun. Building things is really fun. But I think that making sure that things that are already in operation are well funded and well maintained, and that we're investing in those really well is sometimes a better idea. And I think that we forget that because it's not new and it's not exciting. So I would just want to make sure that we're funding all the things that we already have that are already amazing and making sure that those are really up to date, they're really rocking, we're doing those, and then building new fun things. That would be my takeaway, the thing that I would want to talk about more.
And keeping in mind with that all of this funding is restricted. It's restricted to opioid related recovery and prevention and things like that. Yeah. Other questions? Yep. Gary.
Not so much a question, but and this can go into our work session. I'm really excited about the Skagit Star Center, especially with a lot of the law enforcement just being able to deal with all that comes with their jobs. But it says 75 employees. How many people are you thinking will be in the Star Center and like give us a high number or a low number, like just on average?
So it's 48 beds, and I
Okay.
would expect those to mostly be full. So probably 48 patients at a given time.
So you have 75 employees. Of course, that's around the clock, obviously. So,
Yeah, 24/7, 7 days a week.
yeah. Okay.
Other questions, thoughts, priorities? We save them for a, do we want to reach out and set up a time to sit down and discuss this, a study session? Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay. Monica, George, thank you again for coming.
Thank you so much for having us. And if I may just have 20 more seconds, wanted to remind you about 2 upcoming meetings.
Please.
Would that be okay? Thank you. So speaking of joint meetings, we would love to invite you back to another joint meeting. You should have it already on your calendars, but we'll be sending out reminders. We would love to see you on September 30th at 6 o'clock. We will provide both online and in-person options for another joint meeting. The purpose of this meeting would be to dive deeper in and discuss the option of an interlocal agreement formalizing the North Star partnership. I know that Mayor Donovan and Councilmember Hudson were part of a work group that worked on drafting this agreement over the last couple of months since that meeting in June. So we hope to see you there. And then also speaking of the Star Center, currently scheduled to launch and open in February of next year. We are hoping, though, we tentatively have a ribbon cutting ceremony scheduled for December 16th. As we finalize details, we would love to send you more information and invite you there as well. Thank you so very much for having us. We look forward to coming back to a work session.
Yes, thank you. Before you go, one more question.
Just a general sort of question I would want to start with is sort of what's the best practices in this arena? You know, what are the other cities and counties in the state at least doing? What have we heard from AWC, you know, and the County Association? Not that we're gonna, you know, fit into the same mold as King County or anybody else. But I'd like to understand sort of what the state and other practitioners are doing. What's really working out there? What are effective practices? And then how is that even relevant to Skagit County? And most, you know, some of them will just go off the table, but I just want to be informed by that as well. And you guys have probably done that work amongst the North Star teams. So I'd love to hear a synthesis.
From what I've heard, it's, they're all looking at Skagit County saying, wow, that is collaboration. We should do that. Have you heard any other
That's
things?
awful generous.
That is true.
We, at a work session, be happy to share what our neighboring counties, how they're spending their funds.
Wow. Okay. Council, you also have the option to make a motion. Didn't think so. Thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank you
Have a
so
good
much.
night.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item B. It's a renewal of interim regulations for accessory dwelling units, and our principal planner, Rebecca Lowell, will present this item. Hello, Rebecca.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As the mayor stated, the item that I have before you this evening is a renewal of the interim ordinance for the accessory dwelling units, or what we call ADUs. You have seen this exact same or very similar ordinance before you 3 times before. This will be the 4th time tonight. And we are simply asking for a 6-month extension of those regulations to keep the same ones in place, because the currently in place ordinance will expire on September, in September. So we need to get that extended, as we're not ready to adopt permanent regulations quite yet.
Okay, great. Questions for Rebecca? Or motions? So moved.
You need to have a public hearing, Mayor.
We have a public, oh, thank you. All right, no questions though? All right, we will open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item can come on up to the podium. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, and your motion still stands.
Yes, it does.
Second.
Motion by Andrew and a second by Melissa. Any more discussion on this item? Yeah,
Might
Richard.
just confirm, so this interim ordinance would last for 6 more months. We intend to have our housing element and our development regulations for the housing element done by the end of this year. If I'm not mistaken, that's the
goal.
That's the goal. And so once if and when we do, let's just go with comp plan. Maybe that'll be easier to stomach. That will supersede this when that's done.
Comp plans don't have the force of law, but when you do adopt a development regulation in support of the comp plan, it will repeal this. That'll be written into that new ordinance.
Okay. Okay.
As you'll recall, one of the reasons that we couldn't just adopt the permanent regulations that we want to see on the books was because we have goals, objectives, and policies in our existing housing element of the comprehensive plan that conflict with portions of the ADU regulations. So as soon as we're able to get that removed from the housing element at the same time or closely thereafter, we'll be able to adopt the permanent regulations in the form of, and what I'm speaking to is the ownership issue of having to do that. So we'll be able to remove that and clean that all up and come before you with a new permanent regulation, and then this gets repealed.
Thanks for the clarification.
Any more discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Item C is a proposed ordinance for off-street parking, and Rebecca Lowell has this one as well.
Thank you. So very similar to the last agenda item is the second ordinance before you this evening for the off-street parking. Similar to the ADUs, you've had this same item before you 3 times. The only difference is that this, the interim ordinance actually did lapse. And so we need to reinitiate the moratorium procedures, put this back in place, which is what is before you this evening. But I can also tell you that there have been no projects impacted by that lapse, but we want to make sure that stays true by asking for adoption of this ordinance before you this evening.
Questions for Rebecca on ordinance 3919? Hearing for this one as well, or is that coming?
You'll have a hearing within 60 days.
Okay. Great. Any motions for ordinance 3919?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Andrew, second by Mary. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Ordinance passes. Thank you, Rebecca. Item D is a proposed agreement with a bargaining agreement with the Police Command Guild, and Human Resources Director Aaron Cater is here with us. Aaron.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I'm here regarding the Police Command Guild Collective Bargaining Agreement. Our police lieutenants organized in April of 2025 this year. We had 2 negotiation sessions with them. Their main concerns was compression between the sergeants and then time off. This agreement covers or impacts 3 employees. The term is from August 2025 through December of 2027. It increases the differential between the sergeants and the lieutenants. It removes their ability to earn overtime. It creates an FLSA exemption, but it provides 70 hours of professional leave each year to offset their overtime. The approximate cost for the remainder of the year is $15,600.
Any questions for Aaron?
I have a quick question that just
Yeah.
popped into my head. We wouldn't see compression with the 3 lieutenants butting up against the chief's salary, would we?
We do not.
Okay, excellent. With that, I'll make a motion that council authorize the mayor to sign the Police Command Guild Collective Bargaining Agreement.
Second.
Motion by Melissa and a second by Garrett. Garrett? I just
Garrett?
renamed
Oh, wow.
it. Second by Gary. Any discussion on this side? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Aaron. All right, item E is a proposed agreement with David Evans and Associates and our Public Works Capital Projects Manager, Frank Reiner, too. Frank.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. So I'm coming with you with an agreement addendum, actually. This is addendum number 4, and this is the second of a pair of addendums that we did to the David Evans contract for the design of the Carpenter Creek Hickox Road Culvert Replacement Project or Fish Barrier Improvement Project. This particular set of bookends regarded some adjustments to our 60% design. Just to kind of recap a little bit what led us here, we did complete the 60% design, and we recognized that due to the very unique characteristics of the ravine, particularly the northwest side of the ravine where it gets very steep adjacent to the roadway climbing up, that our project was starting to turn into an ever escalating cost with really no ceiling in sight. As we were opening up the hole more and more, we were going to require more temporary shoring, which required to open up the hole ever more. We needed to find a different path. So amendment number 3 was to kind of pause the forward progress of this and have the David Evans design team step back from their current design and do a value engineering of that current design and look for better alternatives for us that would, first of all, corral in the ever escalating cost of this one, but also get to us to that optimum balance of an appropriate investment for an appropriate outcome. And so they went ahead with that work and completed that work and came to some alternative design recommendations. They ran them through us and whatnot. There's a few minor ones and then one major one. The major one is a departure from ordinary culvert replacement projects, in that typically a culvert replacement project, you put in your temporary shoring to completely open up the excavation, and then you work within that to actually put in the culvert. And it's a completely different approach. In this particular case, rather than doing temporary shoring to completely open up the excavation, we will actually make the shoring permanent and make it actually part of the culvert structure itself. Ordinarily, it wouldn't be a cost improvement on a culvert replacement project, but in this particular case, it works. And it works mainly by shrinking the overall size of the excavation, because now the temporary shoring is an integral part of the culvert itself. And so now amendment number 4 that I bring to you tonight is the amendment that will authorize us for the additional engineering design services, particularly the structural design services and the geotechnical analysis that will allow us to support that design. And so the recommended action I'm bringing you tonight is a motion to authorize the mayor to execute contract amendment with David Evans and Associates for the additional civil engineering design services to support this project to completion. Are there any questions?
Questions or motions for Frank? No more.
What is this additional amendment going to cost the city?
The additional amendment, so there is a table in your memo that lists all the amendments to date. This amendment is $119,675. That will bring the contract to a new not to exceed authorized total of $574,740. And in all honesty, for $120,000, we are easily saving in excess of 10 times that in construction costs at this point in time. I say at least because we never found an end to the cost escalation that we were struggling with at the beginning of the summer.
Richard, do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't want to catch you on the spot. Do you remember what the design width specification for this crossing is? Sort of how big is this thing going to be?
Lane, do you remember off the top of your head?
There you go.
You're talking the culvert itself.
Yes, yeah.
Culverts, how wide?
30 feet.
30 feet. Is it anything above 20 becomes a bridge for long-term
It's
inspection?
a little more fuzzy than that, but anything that gets wider than that starts to require structural design issues that start to creep towards a bridge. But at the end of the day, WashDOT created an alternative design methodology for wider culverts as part of the state's fish barrier program, because they had to deal with some pretty substantial culvert widths in the state highway fish barrier replacement program. So we actually have design standards for culverts of that width now that we didn't have 10 years ago when we started this.
it's not going to change our maintenance. Is it going to change our maintenance? Inspection is the word I think I was looking for. No, okay.
No, not especially. This is really an exercise in the constructability side of things. The fundamental nature of the culvert is changing from a 3-sided box back to a 4-sided box structural culvert, just by nature of the other changes that we're making in the design and such. But primarily, that's an effort in fitting it to the circumstances. The design standards themselves are not particularly specialty where the culvert is concerned. The primary impact actually that requires the lion's share of the structural design you've heard me talk about tonight is for actually the wing walls of the culvert. Because those are now going to essentially be concrete faced soldier pile retaining walls rather than the cast or precast concrete retaining walls that they used to be.
Thanks for all the work you're doing on it. It's an important site. So,
I'll make a motion to approve.
second.
Motion by Andrew and a second by Gary. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. Motion passes, and I think Frank is going to keep the party going to item F. It's a proposed agreement with Wilson Engineering.
Okay. Thank you very much. Tonight, I'm bringing a contract amendment. This is probably going to be one of the last ones because we're nearly done with the project at this point. To authorize the mayor to execute a contract amendment with Wilson Engineering for additional engineering and modeling services to support the combined sewer separation feasibility study project. So Wilson, for the last year and a half now, has been providing and developing a analysis of an area in our central uptown area near the high school and the hospital for conversion from the current combined sewer service to a separated utility. So separating stormwater from the existing wastewater stream with a specific objective of reducing the wastewater impact to our wastewater treatment plant, extending the potential life of that plant in the face of other growth concerns and such, to kind of hold off that major upgrade that is very often triggered in due course when the usage grows big enough. We've been moving through the analysis portion of this pretty much over time. In the course of that, we did incur some additional costs primarily associated with the alternatives analysis between which type of utility is going to be the long-term wastewater utility and which is the new utility. What we found very early on in the alternatives analysis is the cost was basically the same between the two. So we sent Wilson back to start to analyze some secondary alternatives analysis criteria to try and tease out which one was going to be the actual better alternative for the city to pursue. So that required them to go back to their model, particularly their stormwater model, and do some additional calculations, some additional analysis to kind of compare that, also to do some additional homework on the regulatory side of things. So what regulations apply to the sanitary sewer system long-term versus what regulations apply to the storm sewer system. As you heard at your last meeting, the teaser here is the new stormwater is the better alternative. I do anticipate in October coming with a presentation, though, to council to kind of talk about this overall project. For tonight, I'm coming to you requesting amendment for an additional $14,942 to pay for essentially that final bit of alternatives analysis before we get to the final report this fall. With that, do you have any questions?
Questions? Yeah.
You said that you are going to have in October the finalized report.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
Actually, what I will have is a presentation to council. We won't final report until I present it to council and hear any feedback that you happen to have on the subject. But we're really kind of getting down into the final stretches with an anticipated deadline of this project being completed, so that we kind of move on to the next phase, which is actually planning for this effort after the first of the year.
Oh, that's sounds fantastic. I'm assuming that you are coordinating with development services right now, because I think that they're probably waiting for some of this.
There is a level of conversation that started, and in particular, introducing the conversation in the context of where development is particularly focused, particularly where it overlaps with the study area and such, and what implications that may or may not have on this conversation. In the end, the analysis that the feasibility study did largely focused on existing conditions, not necessarily forward looking too much into the future because the relative timing between the two studies. We largely focused on defining a solution that pulled that target 3 to 5 megagallons per day flow out of the wastewater stream as this is a good objective to have based on the analysis we have to date, because it will buffer against the hypothetical future impacts of development, which at the time this study was being scoped last year was still far off in the future.
One other item would be the wastewater treatment comp plan. There's a modeling effort that's in that as well, that we're working with HDR, that we are talking with our partners in Department of Public Services.
They left.
Already gone. So we're working with them because of the impacts of what you're looking at. If you're changing zoning, what is the impact to the wastewater system, the wastewater treatment conveyance system, as well as the plant itself? So all of that is being worked there, Councilmember Vandersteen.
And will that piece that you just talked about maybe be presented at this?
That is being worked right now for HDR to do the modeling, and whatever we come up with that, we are working with development services so they can bring it to you or as a joint venture, so that, again, it will impact what you're doing with code.
And then just to finish that, what you would see in the future, and that's a future that's not yet scheduled yet, is that all these pieces will converge upon a strategic plan for the actual delivery of the separation system. And that would include looking at how are we going to phase that, because we can't just take that whole area's streets and tear them up all in one go and such. But as with any utility project, when you open up the ground, there's looking for opportunities for improvements at the same time. And so these various comprehensive and strategic plans come together in a synthesis of what sorts of capital improvement projects do we need to do to our utility system, whether it's improvement projects to build a new storm system or improvement projects, since the hole's already open, so to speak, to upsize, if necessary, wastewater pipes for additional conveyance and similar activities. And of course, piled on top of all that is then how the streets are rebuilt on top afterwards. So there's a lot of strategic planning here that we're talking about that's happening more or less side by side, not necessarily immediately synchronized, but certainly talking with one another, but they're all converging on that eventual next step outcome.
One last thing, thank you, Frank, is for Councilmember Vandersteen and the rest of the council and our esteemed mayor, would be, if you love the idea that when a new development goes in and we put it through that traffic model that would update what the level of service would be and the impacts to that, I think similarly with the wastewater side of the house. If you were to hypothetically put a 40 unit, planned unit development in a certain spot, not only what is the impact to the traffic, looking 2D, but how about going underneath and see what the impacts are going to be to the conveyance systems as well as the treatment plant? Because as you guys know, when future development was done over in Swim, what was the limiting factor? The wastewater treatment plant. And when that went away, everything went stop. And we don't want that to happen. So that's in the future as we're talking here.
Well, thank you guys for entertaining those. Sorry.
It's important right now. Yep. Other questions or motions?
I'll make a motion. Nobody else would like to?
Roll.
We'll second that motion.
Motion by Andrew and a second by Mary. More discussion? No? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Thank you,
very
Frank.
much for your
I feel like I get a step closer to earning an engineering degree every time you present. Appreciate it. Item G is a proposed agreement with Scott Wall Construction and Parks and Rec Director Jennifer Berners here. Hi, Jennifer.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm here this evening, not morning. It's been a long day. So to talk to you about Bakerview restroom. So as we all know, Bakerview restroom was damaged in a fire. And so we've been in continual process trying to resolve that issue to get it to bid. We actually took it to bid. And we took it to bid on July 29th and it was closed on August 21st. 6 construction firms submitted their bids, with the low bidder being Scott Wall Construction, with a bid of $74,233. That does include sales tax with that number. The bids ranged from a low of the $74,233 up to $215,315. The bid sheet was included in your packet there. You can see the range in that bid sheet. So the work should be completed by the end of November or sooner. Depends on how fast we can get all their paperwork and stuff together. They'll have a 45-day work window to get the work done. So what we're asking for is for the city council to approve the mayor to enter into an agreement with Scott Wall Construction so we can start on the restroom project.
Questions for Jennifer?
I don't have any, well, I do have a question. This is covered by insurance, isn't it?
Correct.
And it's
Except for we have a $25,000 deductible.
Oh,
So
that's all.
everything's, after that is covered by insurance.
Okay.
Yes.
It seems to me that it's significantly less expensive than I think we initially anticipated, isn't it?
There's, well, you can see the wide range. And so it just really depends on, you never know what your bids are going to be when you get them in. And so there was bids up to 215,000, and this is just for the construction piece. Remember, we also had the engineering piece that we've been working on that got us the
Okay.
bid docs. So that was an additional 70,000 just for that. It all adds up together, but
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this bid and let the mayor sign off on it.
Second.
Motion by Mary and a second by Melissa. More discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Thank you,
thank
Jennifer.
you.
That is the end of our new business. For item 7, I'll ask our city attorney if there's a need for executive session this evening.
No.
And with that, we will adjourn the City of Mount Vernon City Council meeting for Wednesday, September 10th, 2025 at 8:12 p.m.